I'm Renee Tucci, and today we're going to be creating a centerpiece using only baby's breath. One of the most popular videos on my channel is how to make a garland out of baby's breath. It's a very popular wedding and event centerpiece option. So as a companion to that, I wanted to create a centerpiece out of using just baby's breath. These two videos can work together. I'll drop a link below for the garland video. Now, before we start putting the flowers in the vase, we have to prepare our baby's breath. Now, this baby's breath happens to be a variety that is a larger head, fluffier. There are varieties on the market that are tighter heads, a little beadier. So you really just have to choose the variety that has the look that you're going for. This particular bunch has just been unsleeved. It's just been pulled out of the plastic. So it's a little tight and mangled into itself. So the first step is to fluff it out and untangle it. And the easiest way to do that is to just give it a shake and a gentle tug as you're doing that. Now, that will help loosen up the bunch as a whole. To separate the stems individually, I would recommend holding the bunch upside down, and as you shimmy and shake the bouquet, simply pull each stem out. That way you'll minimize the breakage. You can see it gets really tangled. So if you just pull without sort of giving it a gentle shake, you really can break the stem, and that will give you a lot of waste. So if you want to stretch the bunch and get as much use out of it as possible, you'll want to treat it with care and do that by giving it a little shimmy and a shake. Okay, the next step in getting together our baby's breath centerpiece is to prepare the stems. Now this vase we're going to be using here today, this is a 6-inch by 5, I believe it's 5-inch wide ceramic vase. And this would be appropriate for the center of a table so that guests can still see across each other. I'm going to take my stems and prepare them by segmenting the stems to get as much mileage out of it as possible. So if you look at a stem of baby's breath, you can see that it is sectioned off. And these sectioned off sections off of the main stem are called laterals. So what we want to do is separate off the laterals to be individual stems, and we want to make sure that each lateral is long enough to reach the bottom of the vase. So as you'll see, once we get higher up on the stem, you will come across laterals that are shorter as we dissect the stem. So for example, this piece on its own right here, that's a bit too short to put into our arrangement and still have it reach the bottom of the container. But if we leave it attached to this top cluster, it will work just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and dissect all of my stems here from this bunch into individual pieces for me to add into the vase. Now as you're going through and cleaning up and preparing your stems, if you come across any headless stems or bloomless laterals, just go ahead and cut those off. That sometimes is just the nature of how these things come. There's been breakage somewhere along the way and those little nubs were sticking up, so we'll just do away with those. Okay, so now we've got a bunch of smaller individual stems of baby's breath. And as you start to put this together, I would recommend doing it in your hand as a bouquet and then just giving it a quick chop and a drop into the vase. I think that's where you're going to find your easiest technique and your most success. Keep in mind though that we're trying to create a rounded centerpiece. This is something that would go in the center of a round guest table. It's going to be seen from all sides, so we're making a radial design. A radial design appears as though it is radiating from the center, like spokes on a wheel or the rays of the sun. So when you are looking at your stems, each individual stem is different, and some of them have a slope to them, a slight slope. So for example, this piece is higher here and lower here. Now starting with this piece as our center, our top center, we're just going to build around it. So I've got smaller pieces here, some that are larger, and we're just going to work them in, making use of the slope of the stem. So again, here's another one where the taller point is here, the lower point is here, so therefore the taller point's going to go in the center, opposite of the first one that we did. And so now we're already starting to get a nice rounded dome shape to our bunch, our cluster of baby's breath. So going through here, making quick decisions about how long the stem is and how tall the stem is, how tall the different branches are. You can quickly decide how to piece this puzzle together and build yourself a really luscious bundle of baby's breath to act as your centerpiece. Okay, I've got my baby's breath put together here in a beautiful radial style design, a little higher in the center, a little lower on the edges. So now it's time to chop and drop our arrangement into the vase. So you'll want the baby's breath to sit right at the neck of the container so that there's no gap between where the container ends and the flowers start. You don't want to have it up too high, and you don't want to have it too low where everything's squished in. So I would recommend pulling your vessel to the side of the table, and off the table, hold your bunch against the vase and lower it and raise it until it's where you want it to be. In this case, I want it to be right about here. So following that logic, I'm just going to move it so you can see. I'm going to follow this down, and this is where it hits the table. So I'm going to go slightly above that to allow for the Lazy Susan and the container bottom. I'm going to go to right about here to cut my stems. One quick cut, and we can drop it right in. And that's it. There you have a single bunch worth of baby's breath, fluffy, big-headed baby's breath, to sit in a vase for a centerpiece. Baby's breath lasts for a very long time, so you can do these ahead of time. They'll last at room temperature just fine for several days. If you needed to make them in a really warm area, you might want to consider keeping them in a refrigerator, somewhere around the 40-degree mark, if you need to keep them ahead of time for a few days. But here is your vase centerpiece filled with baby's breath. Now, what if you're looking for a different formed centerpiece? For example, something long instead of round. Now, we can certainly recreate that very easily. I have a 4x4 by 10 wooden box here that I've prepared with a single brick of pre-soaked floral foam, and I've got some water in here to make sure that our foam stays nice and wet. And I'm going to go ahead and use the same baby's breath that we just cut and put in our vase. Now, the trick here is to cut the baby's breath and do it in layers. So I recommend doing a short layer close to the foam, filling that in entirely, and then adding an outer layer that is bigger and fluffier. That way all of your mechanics are sure to be covered and everything's drinking water. Okay, now you can see I've got my first layer in here. I've got all the baby's breath cut low and tight to the container. Just a quick refresher, if you're new to floral design, anytime that you're putting fresh flowers in floral foam, you want to get the stem at least an inch, if not 2 inches into the foam, and you want to make sure the stem is clear of any leaves, thorns, ridges in the stem. Now, luckily with baby's breath, we don't have to worry about any of that. They have clean stems already, so you just want to decide how long you want your stem, cut an extra inch, inch and a half, 2 inches, and then press it right into the foam, always giving your stem a good, clean, angled cut so that it pierces right through. Now it's time to add our second layer. This one we're going to leave longer, and we're going to just allow it to float above our initial layer, and that's going to give us some volume and really allow this to sing as a full centerpiece. Okay, I finished putting one bunch of baby's breath in here. This is the same bunch we just had in our round vase, and I've allowed that second layer to be taller here. Quick rule of thumb when you're creating centerpieces, you want the height of the flowers to be lower than your elbow to the top of your fist on a table. That will allow people to be able to see across the flowers and have a conversation with the person across the table. Now, this front side is done pretty well. I could have used a bit more on the back side, so I would recommend for this type of design maybe a bunch and a half worth of baby's breath. Baby's breath is not always a 10-stem bunch though, like other traditional flower bunches. It's sold by weight. So some of the bunches are 7 stems, some are 12, but they have about the same volume of flowers, just a different stem count. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope that you've learned a tip or technique and that you go out and create.